give us 10 seconds. Joel Leyden for the Israel News Agency. Today with us, we have the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem for Foreign Relations, and that would be Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, one of Israel's more articulate and knowledgeable speakers. Hi, how are you?
Hi, great. How are you?
We're doing well. We're doing well. I'm sure we'd be doing a lot better. But before delving into the area of Hamas and Gaza and Lebanon, I understand that you've been involved with a lot of peacemaking efforts. Can you articulate on that?
Sure. Last year, at around this time, even before the Abraham Accords were signed, a good friend of mine and I were talking about the fact that the future, the new horizon for Israel is the Gulf region. We kind of felt that something was coming, and we created the UAE Israel Business Council. In August the 13th, when peace was announced, when normalization was announced, we immediately created an online platform for our council, and we put a board together. And I'm so pleased that today we're a platform of over 3,000 people with LinkedIn groups that are very significant. We've been doing a lot of business between Israelis and Emiratis, and we're basically one of the main kind of business councils working with the countries. And so for me, this is the infrastructure of peace, of a long-lasting peace, of a people-to-people peace. As well as that, I also created founded the Gulf Israel Women's Forum, because I always feel that women are kind of very natural bridge builders and peace builders. And that's the whole Gulf. So we have women from different Gulf countries, Morocco, Bahrain, UAE, and that's been incredible. And basically the bottom line is that this is a different peace from what we've had. This is a peace that people are excited about. It's fantastic for the region to be able to talk to regional partners about regional challenges. And I'm thrilled, and I've created so many very strong relationships and bonds over the last year. And these bonds, thank God, even through now trying times, are holding strong. And I see this peace as a sustainable, warm peace, please God, for many, many years to come. And it was with this that, you know, it was even more kind of, we were on this bubble, this high of peace building, and then this happens. And what I tell people is that this is happening because of that. Hamas and Iran don't want Israel to be close to the Arab world, don't want Jews and Arabs to be close, the way that we're doing in our city, the way that is happening in the country. And they're doing this exactly because there's a rapprochement going on at the moment between Jews and Arabs in general. And that's why we find ourselves in this story. It's not, you know, people are like, oh, what a shame that this has happened. First of all, it's not going to finish anything good that we started. But this is happening. People shouldn't be confused. This is happening because this threatens the, you know, the axis of evil of Iran and the Muslim Brotherhood around the region.
Which peace partners have you been active with?
Well, mainly the UAE, business people, government people, Bahrain, Morocco. These are the countries, Sudan, and hopefully, please God, there'll be more added to that list.
Now, is this a real peace?
Absolutely. It's the most real peace we've had, because the peace with Egypt and Jordan was a leader's peace. It was signed, but it never percolated down to the people. This was signed, but then the people went whoosh and started like just running towards each other. And it's actually kind of, I'm so, I guess, thrilled that I've been so lucky, so privileged to be on the front line of this and to experience this. And one day, hopefully, when you know, I'll be able to tell my kids what it was like before peace, because they won't know the difference. I was there with my family in December, and they loved it. They've never been treated so nicely, so warmly. It was wonderful.
So just to make sure I've got my facts correct here, you are the co-founder of the
UAE Israel Business Council, and also the co-founder of the Gulf Israel Women's Forum.
Now, if you wanted to join these different organizations, how does one go about doing that?
Well, the UAE Israel Business Council, we have an online platform. You could go in, tell us what you're interested in. It's mainly for business people, and join up. The Gulf Israel Women's Forum, Joel, you're the wrong sex. So, but any woman that wants to join, please be in touch with me via LinkedIn or Twitter.
Okay, super.
Find.
And what is happening with Morocco?
Well, Morocco is exciting because, you know, Jews have lived there peacefully for many, many years. My family are from Morocco, so I have a particular excitement about Morocco. And there too, we're seeing that people are very interested. I've already been approached by business people in Morocco telling me, why don't you open a Morocco-Israel Business Council? And at the end of October, please God, I'm going to be putting together a conference, less business and more common heritage, faith-based history conference, which will be sponsored by the King of Morocco, the Pope, and lots of other religious leaders.
No, I understand a few weeks after the peace signing between the UAE and Israel, there were just a few Israelis that visited UAE. How many Israelis visited the UAE?
Well, 6 months into the peace, 130,000 Israelis through a pandemic.
I have to repeat that. Please
through
repeat
a
that
pandemic,
for me. I didn't hear that number.
Through a pandemic, where the majority of the time the airport was closed, 130,000 Israelis visited the UAE.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then today we've got this garbage, and they're just trying to sabotage these relations. Am I correct?
Yes, that's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing.
How about Sudan?
Well, Sudan is slower. It's coming out of their own kind of traumatic conflicts. I think that'll take a little longer. Look, the difference is the UAE and us were very similar. We're diverse societies, advanced economies, highly educated people. Sudan things are a little different. But again, my very wonderful colleague, Minister Eli Cohen, was there, and he brings back good tidings. And please God, this will be, you know, this is a major African country aiding and abetting our enemies, which is now not just neutralized, but our friends. And that is huge.
Now, we know that you were born and raised in Gibraltar. You went to school, I believe, in England. Is that correct?
Yeah, I went to college in England. I'm a lawyer by profession, and I moved to Israel 20 years ago.
Okay, and in those 20 years, you've achieved a lot in Israel. What roles have you held there?
Well, the main achievement is that I learned to speak Hebrew. So I see that as, well, that and the fact that I had 4 kids here who were born here. So I've got 4 Israeli-born children, which is always a wonderful thing for me. I feel like I gave them a gift to be born in Jerusalem, the capital city, not just of our country, but of our people. And I was a nonprofit for many years, working with a lot of needy population groups. Eventually, I decided to open up my own communications consulting firm. I was good at messaging and I wanted to help other people. And then through that business, I got called in to help a small political party with political messaging. The next thing I know, I was running for office, and I was a city councillor from 2016. And in 2018, I ran again and I became one of the deputy mayors.
So in addition to being a deputy mayor, do you still offer these professional consulting services?
Well, the truth is I really have very little time anymore. I have a partner who does most of the work, but now and again, I've got clients who don't want to let go of me and they beg me to help them. And I find the time, you know, it's difficult to let go of my old clients.
Well, again, it's truly a pleasure to be on here with you. Israel has many fine, articulate speakers. Our budgeting in terms of getting the message out is somewhat limited. But again, having the likes of yourself, a barrister, is I think that's what we'd call it in England, and
that's right.
An attorney, as I believe you would call it in the States. It's really a gift, a true asset for us, especially when it comes to peacemaking efforts, and especially when it comes to articulating the facts, not the propaganda, but the facts of what is going on as you and I are speaking right now. Because as we are speaking right now, there are rockets being launched out of Gaza by Hamas, an internationally recognized terror organization. Over 4,000 rockets have slammed into Israel or have tried to slam into Israel because we have Iron Dome. 4,000 rockets.
To urban spaces, not to army bases, not to military targets, to homes of people, kindergartens, schools. They are deliberately trying to harm civilians, and we're doing everything to protect their civilians as well as our own. And that is the facts. And it's, you know, and what excuse do they have? You know, one say, oh, you know, the Israeli military is in Gaza. We're not in Gaza anymore. We haven't been there since 2005. So what's the excuse? And the excuse is that they want to get rid of all of us. There's no, you know, this is not a people fighting for two states. These are people who don't want any Jew in any part of the land. And that's the bottom line. And this is what people don't seem to understand. You know, I always say, imagine that you're in Florida and Cuba is launching 3,000 rockets at you. What would the United States do? Within a day, Cuba would be a parking lot. And we call and we warn, and we are the most ethical army in the world. We don't look for civilian casualty. We look to defend ourselves first, and we look to protect life. And that's what we do. And people don't seem to understand this. We left Gaza. They are their own autonomous state. Why are they launching rockets into Israel?
Well, they say they're launching rockets into Israel to protest the ethnic cleansing that the Jews in Jerusalem are doing to the people of East Jerusalem.
This is the only ethnic cleansing in history where the Palestinian population has tripled since the beginning of the cleansing. It's completely ridiculous, of course.
Is there ethnic cleansing taking place in Israel?
Oh, please. The only ethnic cleansing that happened was in 1948 when the Jews were kicked out by the Jordanians when they illegally occupied East Jerusalem.
Is there apartheid?
With almost 2 million Arabs, Israeli citizens within our country who have equal rights under the law, everything. They have equal rights. We have people in all walks of life, from the judges in court, to doctors and lawyers and police officers and government members of Knesset, everything. There's equal opportunity and equal rights.
But I keep hearing of apartheid.
People who say apartheid are actually appropriating that term very unfairly from the suffering of the South Africans. People don't seem to understand what apartheid is. Apartheid means separate, means when you don't live together, when you don't eat in the same cafes or go in the same buses or be able to be educated in the same places or go to the same hospitals. Israel is an integrated society. I've given birth 4 times, and every single time there's been an Arab woman sharing a room with me. And so people don't have a clue what apartheid even means. It's one of these things that get thrown around and nobody knows what it means. Nobody knows what ethnic cleansing means. Ethnic cleansing was the Holocaust. Ethnic cleansing is the million Uyghurs being systematically murdered by the Chinese. That's ethnic cleansing. We're just defending ourselves. We're saying, you want to live in peace and quiet? Ahlan wa sahlan. This is a place for you.
So Fleur, then, so why is it then that when I'm driving in the West Bank, or we refer to it as Judea, Samaria, I see this big wall in many, many places, a big cement wall separating Israel from the Palestinians. I mean, what's the purpose of that?
Let me tell you why. When I moved to Israel in 2001, okay? When I moved to Israel, it was the worst ever intifada that had ever been. Buses were blowing up. You were sitting in a cafe, 2 days later, the cafe would blow up. Thousands of people died in that second intifada. The reason why we built a wall was because we didn't have a border with the Palestinian Authority that we just created Oslo with and gave them autonomy, gave them guns, gave them security responsibility for themselves. And what did Arafat do with that security responsibility? Turn it into terrorist cells in order to attack us. We built the wall in a defensive step. And since we built that wall, we now have a border with a Palestinian authority that can now no longer send suicide bombers to kill us. Again, everything is, that's not apartheid. 100,000 Palestinians come in every day from the checkpoint, from that wall, to work in Israel. Why do they come in every day? Because the Palestinian Authority has never built an economy for them. And so they're dependent on Israeli jobs, and we are dependent on manpower, and it works very well. But they go through a checkpoint to make sure that nobody's coming in with a suicide belt, nobody's coming in to kill us. Now, that's an uncomfortable fact for the West. Like Golda Meir says, I'd rather have a bad image and be alive and have a country than have a good image and be dead.
So there's a wall there so that when I'm driving on the road, that if some idiot, not the majority of Palestinians who want peace, but some idiot who perhaps is being paid by Hamas or Hezbollah or by Iran to take out a AR-16, take out a gun, even throw a bottle or a rock, cannot reach my car. The purpose of that wall, I believe, is to defend the drivers on the road from being attacked. But as you stated,
everybody. There's plenty of Arabs who died in terrorist attacks. We're defending the people. We're defending the people in Jerusalem. That's why the wall was built. The wall was built to keep out West Bank terrorists, and it achieved its aim. It did.
So it's not an apartheid wall. It's more of a defensive fence. And as you stated very, very well, and I know it, having served in the IDF, having served at many security checkpoints, including Kalandia several times, that's between Jerusalem and Ramallah, that we have hundreds of thousands of Palestinians coming in and leaving on a daily basis, working in Israel, cherishing the fact that they're able to work in a free democracy that allows them freedom of speech. But let me just clarify that. Is there freedom of religion, freedom of speech in Jerusalem for everybody?
Well, there's freedom of religion for everybody in Jerusalem, except for the Jews who want to pray on Temple Mount. In order not to provoke and disturb the status quo and not to create a crisis in the Middle East, we don't let Jews pray on Temple Mount. The weekend where they said we were stopping them from praying in Temple Mount, 100,000 Muslims prayed on Temple Mount. That weekend where they claim that we were somehow denying them freedom of religion. What we deny are the violent troublemakers who come to the mosque with rocks and firecrackers and vandalizing the gates around. Those are the people that we're going to stop, not the peace-loving people who want to just come and pray. 100,000 continue to pray that same weekend where we had to unfortunately get involved and made arrests.
So would it be correct in saying that the Dome of the Rock, Aqsa, it's a holy place for those who are Muslim? It's a sacred place. But is it being used as a military base?
Oh, please. Anybody who comes to Israel, all of these myths would just collapse in a second. It's a big, promenade with a mosque in the middle. And it's been used for prayer. That's the only thing it's been used for, except for the Islamic militants who show up with rocks in order to kill and cause trouble.
Do they maintain weapons inside the mosque?
Well, this is what happened when Israel had to go in. And of course, we ended up being portrayed as the bad guys who were somehow denying, religious prayer. We were just keeping law and order like we're supposed to.
So if I was a Muslim coming from...
When we don't get involved, we get attacked for not getting involved. When we get involved, we get attacked. You can't win.
So if I was a Muslim coming, let's say from Bahrain, from United Arab Emirates, from Saudi Arabia, and I wanted to visit the Dome of the Rock or Al-Aqsa, would I have any problem having access to it?
No. I'm in charge of tourism for the city. And one of the things that we're preparing for is the new wave, please God, of Muslim pilgrims, the way that we've had Christian pilgrims for decades. I look forward to the day, and hopefully it's very soon, where we have Muslim pilgrims coming to pray in the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
So would I be correct in stating that there is complete freedom of religion in Jerusalem?
Absolutely. Complete freedom of religion for most religions, except for Jews who want to pray on Temple Mount.
So now for those who say, well, look, Israel is receiving all these rockets out of Gaza because they're protesting the fact that there are settlers, Jewish settlers, that are trying to kick Palestinians out of East Jerusalem. Where did this start?
Well, this story started 40 years ago. Okay, everybody thinks it's new. This is a very simple story of a property dispute. A Jewish trust that can prove ownership versus a Palestinian family who can't, who are allowed to live there by the Jordanian rule of 48 to 67. And they knew full well they had no ownership rights. Now, the Israeli courts, who are very, very, very fair courts, gave them an opportunity to remedy their situation and said, look, you now become protected tenants. Nobody can kick you out. Pay some type of nominal rent and you're good. And then, of course, the politicians got involved, the Palestinian leaders got involved, and they wanted to make a poster out of victimization of Palestinians from these families. For years, they didn't pay rent until the trust went and said, well, they haven't paid rent. We want our property back. They never had property rights in these properties. But of course, everything has been conflagrated in order to sound like we're kicking people out. Yes, Joel, if you own an apartment and somebody who is there doesn't pay you rent, you will also go and kick them out. And this is not a political thing. This is a legal thing. And that's what I keep telling people.
Because some people believe you have a bunch of these rough, unshaven Jewish settlers just marching into Palestinian homes in East Jerusalem and forcing them to leave their homes and taking their furniture. And I mean, is that the case?
Well, what we have is a property dispute that could have been easily remedied. And I don't know who whispered in the ears of this family, of these families. They're basically getting kicked out for non-payment of rent.
So it's a legal dispute.
Do we make a special law for people just so it makes us look bad? We also kick out settlers from the West Bank when they go into settlements that are Palestinian owned, that property are Palestinian owned. The same court system that will evict these families are the same court system that evicts Israeli settlers in Judea and Samaria when they go to some property that they can't prove full ownership of. So should we have a different law for Arabs just to make us look better?
So we have Jews that were living there before 1948, and then
Jews were living there before 1948. They got ethnically cleansed by Jordan in 1948.
And then Jordan occupied what's known as East Jerusalem today from 1967 until 1967.
From 48.
From 48 to 1967. And there were Palestinians and or Arabs that had purchased land there. So here you've got Jewish land that under Jordanian occupation was then provided to Palestinians. Do I have that?
But not owned, but not ownership. They didn't possess the land. They didn't repossess the land. It was very clear that this was, they were allowed to live there. That's the legal status. Legally, even their lawyers said that they're squatters.
So even under Jordanian occupation, they were living there illegally?
Yes, not illegally, no. The Jordanian occupation allowed them to live there, but there was no ownership rights, and that was made very clear to them.
So now how is this transcended into Hamas launching 4,000 rockets?
It's a conflagrated, invented provocation. And the timing was just really bad. Like, it's been going on for 40 years. And seriously, the court case was supposed to come to a head last week. Thank God the Attorney General convinced the court to wait 30 days because there was just 2 tenths. The week was just 2 tenths. And so we've put this off for another month because we didn't want to add petrol to an already low burning fire.
So if I understand you correctly, and I'm trying to speak to a lot of people that do not understand what's happening in the Middle East, let alone what's happening in Jerusalem or Gaza or Lebanon or the entire region. What's happening today in regards to Hamas in Gaza and Israel really has nothing at all to do with Jerusalem. Am I correct?
Now, no, there is one thing that's got to do with it, that they need to, for political reasons, make a linkage to Jerusalem. So what do? You send some troublemakers to make trouble in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and you take a property issue and you conflagrate it into a ethnic cleansing slogans, and then you throw a rocket into Jerusalem, a city with 40% Muslims. So this is how much they care about their own people. And that's how you make a linkage. Then you become the defenders of the faith because you are defending Jerusalem. The minute you defend Jerusalem, you have the Muslim world on your side. You know, you have the woke opinions on your side because somehow Jews want to get rid of Muslims, which of course is completely invented. It doesn't exist. We're the most tolerant country in the world. This is not an ethnic thing. This is, we have a land dispute, property dispute, and that's what happens. And the world falls for it again and again and again. They just have to throw out these slogans, and the world is always ready to think ill of the Jews, which to me is the underlying anti-Semitism in, unfortunately, a lot of people still.
So let me ask you then, are we looking at a land dispute or are we looking at Islamic jihad? Just jihad?
We're looking at something else. We're looking at an existential dispute. The Hamas don't want us here at all. When they shout, and when all the European idiots shout from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, it's basically saying, we want to kick all the Jews out or kill them all. That's what these people are saying. You know, the right of return that they're obsessed with is about getting rid of the Jews and liberating the entire land, even though there was never a Palestinian state, as you know. So that's what the Western, slogans, they have no, either they don't know what they're saying or they're anti-Semites. Those are the only two options.
So again, I'm just trying to look for a simplified response. Is this a land dispute or is this jihad?
This is an existential dispute.
Okay. So it's not really
I don't know if it's jihad or not. I don't know enough about the concept, okay? Jihad is a holy war. I think it's more cynical than that. I think they're using religion for their sinister aims. And I have a lot of very religious Muslim friends, so I will never want to denigrate their religious concepts.
Okay.
So that's what I'm telling you, it's an existential. They don't want us here at all. Whether they don't want us here for religious reasons, political reasons, nationalistic reasons, that's not my problem. They just don't want us here.
Can Israel make peace with Hamas?
They don't recognize our existence. How can you make peace with people who don't recognize that you should exist?
Well, Joe Biden thinks that we should be making peace today. We should be de-escalating.
Joe Biden, the American government has categorized Hamas as a terrorist organization. So we can't sit down and speak to an organization that wants us dead. It makes absolutely no sense. Joe Biden, I guess, just wants things to calm down. He's probably getting a lot of pressure from the left flank of his party. But you know, what you see in the press and what's really going on are two different things.
Right.
And Israel needs to get rid of the infrastructure of terror, and we need to restore deterrence. And those are our priorities right now. Whether it takes another 2 days, whether it takes another week, we will do the work that we need to do, and then we will leave.
I just want to reiterate from everything that I have seen and watched and what's on my radar is that Joe Biden truly is a friend of Israel's. And he's taken a stance in regard that, Israel does have a right to defend itself. Israel does have a right to defend its civilian population. And it appears that he might be under a lot of pressure by the extreme left wing of the Democratic Party, which does not recognize Israel as a sovereign state.
Exactly.
Again, they're the ones who are going around saying,
from the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea. So the President of the United States appears to be between a rock and a hard place. But I also believe, and correct me if I'm inaccurate, that Netanyahu is pushing back and saying, look, we don't have a stopwatch on this. We have a mission here, and our mission is to beat terrorism.
America is an important ally, But ultimately, we need to do what a security, intelligence, and what our agenda is. And it doesn't contradict America. Believe me, Iran is behind all this. They are funding Hamas. And they are in a proxy war with the West, with America, through Israel, through Hamas. And, we're only in the first line. We're the first. We're not the last aim of Iran and the Muslim Brotherhood. They're coming for America too. We're just in the front line of it.
So when we hear about Hamas or Hezbollah or Islamic Jihad, are we really supposed to just think of one word, and that would be Iran? I mean, Iran is the problem, not so much Hamas or Islamic Jihad.
Iran is the state sponsor of all these terrorist organizations. They're the state sponsor. Now ask yourself, why would the America go back to the negotiating table to give a pathway to build a nuclear bomb to a genocidal, misogynistic, homophobic regime that has made it very clear that they want to destroy Israel? That's a question to ask.
So what do you say to the White House in terms of we want a ceasefire now?
Here in Israel?
We want a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. What is your response to that?
We respect your opinion, but we need to finish the job that we started.
And that job is?
To destroy the infrastructure and to bring back deterrence.
Now, what do you see in terms of these rockets now coming in from Lebanon?
Well, of course, Hezbollah never misses the chance to join the party when they can. I don't think they want a full-on war with us. But, this adds, remember, Iran is sponsoring both Hamas and Hezbollah. And so it's convenient for them when Israel is under attack to join into the party. I don't think they want a full-scale war with us. And if they do, they're gonna find us exactly in the same way that Hamas found us defending ourselves.
Do you believe that Israel is prepared to challenge Hezbollah?
Israel is unfortunately a country that from the beginning of its existence has had to have fought existential wars. And so we're ready to fight Hezbollah, we're ready to fight Hamas, we're ready to find anyone who threatens our country, and we're ready for it. We hope it doesn't get to that, but we're strong enough. And we are the ones who hold back in order not to cause civilian casualties. But that's the truth. Israel cannot afford to lose one war. If we lose one war, it's a Jewish genocide again. The second one in 100 years. We're not going to let that happen. Never again is a mantra taken very seriously by us.
Just a few more questions. Let me state, at this moment right now, I'm speaking to you from New York. When I look up at the skies here, I see very, very beautiful blue, quiet skies, as opposed to where you're living. How are you guys doing? I mean, you've had over 4,000 rockets. You've got sirens going off almost 24/7. How are you doing?
Well, we're a very resilient nation. And the resilience is what lets us go back to normal. The day that this is over, move forward. People are very traumatized by what's going on right now. Tomorrow, I have the privilege of inviting 80 people who live in the Gaza border, Jewish settlements there, Jewish kibbutzes and moshavs, who are coming, 50 kids who are coming to spend a day of respite that they don't have to run into bomb shelters. So we've organized a day by the pool and some workshops and theater and music. And I look forward to having them here tomorrow. And I hope that they go back to normal. We are traumatized, we're under attack, but we are not going to be beaten.
What advice do you have for the global Jewish community?
Be proud of your people. Stand up for your people. Never believe the ill that is spoken of your own people. Trust your gut, that we're good people, that we're ethical and moral people. and everything else is simple slander and vilification that has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's just now in a different shape.
How
And
do you
so
address people like actress Sarah Silver, who states right out that this is Israel's problem, it's not my problem. The people that are being beat up here in Los Angeles because they're Jews being attacked by Palestinians. Hey, I'm Jewish, but I'm not Israeli. That's an Israeli problem.
it's kind of ironic because her sister's Israeli and lives right opposite me here in my neighborhood, and her nieces and nephews. So it's a shame she feels that way. What she doesn't understand is because Jews get comfortable wherever they are for a long time, that you're always going to be Jewish. You know, wherever you are, you're always going to be Jewish. And that's why, thank God, that there's a Jewish country that will always have your back.
Deputy Mayor, thank you so very much for being with us today. This
Thank
is
you,
Joel
Joel.
Leyden, speaking for the Israel News Agency. God bless you, and God bless the good work that you're doing in Jerusalem.
Thank you, Joel.